Quite literally, Newsmax TV's continuing coverage of America Votes 2016 rolls right on past 11 o'clock in the East. J.D. Hayworth with you on the anchor desk, and right now we are seeing goose eggs. No reports in from Utah, where there is a Republican caucus tonight, nor on the Democrat side of things in the Beehive State. So we are abuzz with expectation there. And then, of course, the state I represented in the United States Congress for 12 years, the Grand Canyon state, Arizona, with so many voters in line today. They stayed on presumably past 7 o'clock to accommodate everybody, so there are late results coming in. Let us show you exactly what is at stake tonight in the grand old party. Arizona is a winner-take-all state. 58 delegates up for grabs. Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and John Kasich on the ballot, and some other names of people who have since suspended their campaigns. Early voting may work into that. Meantime, in Utah, everything is abuzz with the caucus. 40 delegates at stake. It is very interesting the way Utah deals with this. If any candidate exceeds 50% or gets to the 50% mark in vote total in this Utah caucus, they will be rewarded, all 40 delegates in the Utah delegation. Now, speaking of those delegates, here is where we stand as we still await results tonight. Donald Trump remains the Republican frontrunner, a total of 680 delegates. Ted Cruz in second at 423. And the one candidate remaining by virtue of his win as Ohio's favorite son, a winner-take-all state was the Buckeye State. Ohio Governor John Kasich, my former House colleague, there at 143 delegates. Of course, Marco Rubio with 166. He suspended his campaign, but we shall not suspend the conversation as we continue to talk with three distinguished panelists. Screen left, it's very uncommon to see this man because he's so often on the right side of history. At screen left, Skyping in from Northern Virginia, presidential historian and Reagan biographer Craig Shirley of Shirley and Bannister Public Affairs. Center screen, as befits her, from Mesa, Arizona, there in the East Valley. She voted today, the editor-in-chief of Politistick.com, Jennifer Burke. And screen right, from Newsmax, Washington, the gentleman with whom I was elected to Congress back in 1994, Michael Patrick Flanagan, now the president of Flanagan Consulting. And we very much appreciate your time tonight. And MPF, let me begin with you, because so often you are able to offer insights into the Chicago way. I think most of us were shocked today in the wake of what we saw happen in Brussels, that our current commander-in-chief and your fellow Cook County resident, Barack Obama, devoted exactly 51 seconds to that during his state visit to Cuba, and plenty of time in the afternoon for exhibition baseball between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Cuban national team. Your take on that as we see President Obama feeling right at home beside Raul Castro, both of them wearing their shades at the ball game this afternoon.
Too cool for school, I'll tell you. Well, I tell you, he didn't have any problem talking about how Cuba and the United States came into existence because of the horrors of slavery. He never passes an opportunity to equivocate and to rationalize the horrors he sees in this country compared to despots like Cuba, where you're put in jail for what you think, where you're put in jail for the way you behave. I can't wonder, maybe he wants to see the United States like that. I mean, wasn't his Justice Department talking about going after people who didn't believe in global warming and sanctioning them for that? I mean, maybe he is all about the thought police, and maybe Castro is something that he hopes we one day aspire to. He's a national embarrassment. Trump had it right, I think, when Trump said, if Raul didn't meet him at the airport, I would have got back on the plane and left. I think that's the tack he should have taken instead of, once again, swapping spit with a world-class dictator and murderer.
Jennifer Burke, it was interesting to hear the president today talk about slavery and talk about the African experience in America. When you hear Barack Obama and his interesting, and I'm being very diplomatic here, his quote, interesting take on American history and how we relate to a communist neighbor 90 miles from our shore. What is your reaction?
You know, I'm so thankful, and my mom is watching tonight. I'm so thankful that my parents did not raise me to have a chip on my shoulder because of the color of my skin. And I'll tell you, Barack Obama grew up in a much more affluent and, prestigious schools than I did. And it's shameful. Yes, America had slaves. They actually got slaves from other black Africans in Africa. And you know what? We are the country that actually ended slavery. So all that does is continue to create a victim class. And I wasn't alive during the time of slavery. Whatever happened back then does not impact or influence or dictate my life now. I'm the one with control over my life now, but that's not the message that the left wants to send, because they love to create a continued victim class, because that helps give them power over those people. And I thought his speech was shameful. I've seen him get more angry over, if it would have been something he could have turned into a gun control measure or a racial grievance industry opportunity, there would have been anger in his voice. And not only were those 57 seconds an embarrassment because of what he said, but also because of the emotionless way in which he said it.
Craig Shirley, a term comes to mind, and community organizers, who really should be called street agitators, often enlist professional grievance mongers. We saw it over the weekend in Fountain Hills, Arizona, where Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio lives, as Sheriff Joe was welcoming Donald Trump to Arizona. You actually had protesters getting, I believe, on Shea Boulevard and blocking traffic from Scottsdale into Fountain Hills. The picture of one of those who was taken into custody by police, not an Arizonan, a woman from New Orleans who is a George Soros fellow. What is the tradition of legitimate protests versus professional hecklers? And I'm just kind of interested in how this works in our history. Have we seen this before? Is this like
sure.
68, or what year comes to mind for you?
Political protest is as old as the American Republic itself. The American Revolution itself was protest against British rule. We've had protests of slavery in the 1840s and 1850s, the Shays Rebellion, the Whiskey Rebellion, the draft riots in New York City during the Civil War, the war bond riots in the 1920s. So political protest is as old as the Republic, and there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, I think it's very healthy. On the other hand, too, is that when it gets violent, when it gets out of control, when you shut down other people's right of free speech, then that goes over the line. There is a misnomer in this country that free speech is absolute. In fact, it is not. Only the government can be charged with limiting or regulating. It was against the Constitution. Private citizens regulate and censor other people every day. You can't get on a private airplane, privately held corporation, and yell there's a bomb on board, or as the old adage goes, you can't go into a firehouse or go to a movie and yell fire. But so we regulate political speech. So it is not only wrong, it is also illegal for these protesters to go onto property that is rented by Donald Trump, that's paid for by Donald Trump, and try to attempt to shut down his right of free speech. That is a violation of civil law. It's not a violation of the Constitution, but it is a violation of civil law. So, but let me just talk about Obama too. He has a very fractured view of American history. As a matter of fact, slavery was dying as an institution in 1776 and 1783. Is that it only came back with the advent of the cotton gin in the early 19th century. But the country wasn't founded on the basis of slavery. It was actually founded on the basis of the Constitution. I know he likes to see everything through the experience of the slavery experience, but that's simply not true.
Let me turn to Michael Patrick Flanagan here. Mike, we talked about it earlier. It looks like your suspicions have been confirmed. You told us that these various mobs were rent-a-mobs, and out in Arizona, we actually have someone who fills the bill being flown in from New Orleans to create the problems that we saw out between Scottsdale and Fountain Hills on Saturday. We've got about a minute and 15 seconds remaining in this segment.
JD, I was regularly protested in Chicago, and I have a smile on my face because it's actually a warm memory. It was the same 12 people every time, whether it was an environmental issue, a union issue, or whatever. It was the same 12 people. I remember one of the women's name was Gladys. She was there on half scale from the Union Hall, and she just carried whatever sign they gave her that day. We bought them donuts. They were fun to have around. It's the way it's done in Chicago. It's all about taking a picture of it and having the protesters there and ready to do evil violence. You make nice with them, they don't do so much violence. In Trump's case, though, he's going to take voters away from the Democrats permanently, and they will fight this tooth and nail with every violence that they can put together.
So we have the specter of more professional agitation to come.
Much more.
You mentioned what you would go through in your town hall meetings and events. I remember, too, in Arizona. You'd think it'd be very different from Illinois, but I was in a swing district, and the folks from the now-defunct Citizen Action would bring in teams of seniors,
Acorn.
as you mentioned with Gladys. And one night in a rural Arizona town, all those who were brought in actually came over to my side. It was something interesting, not my eloquence, but just as Jack Webb used to say, just the facts. And just the numbers apparently now are starting to come in. Tell you what, we're going to step aside for a few minutes, and then on the other side of the break, we'll take a look at what the numbers are revealing in Arizona and Utah as Newsmax TV's coverage of America Votes 2016 continues to roll right along on this Tuesday evening. So stay with us.